Have you ever wondered how much information you should share with your team? Because failure to properly share the proper amount of information can be detrimental to your practice. So today I want to talk about how much information you should be sharing with your team. So just to give you a little bit of background for those of you who don't know me, I started my practice from the basement and grew it to the current size of about 70 employees. So one of the things I had to learn in keeping a good loyalty and all of that is how much information I needed to share with the team. And something that I've learned through hard knocks is sharing more information is usually much better than not sharing enough. Because failure to share enough information will generally result in people filling in the blanks with all kinds of stories. And trust me, the way they're going to fill in the blanks is often not as good as just giving them the whole truth. So I thought that maybe a good way of demonstrating what I'm saying is to first look at a failure, in my opinion. So for those who know me, you'll know that I'm not a fan of government. And I find they have a lot of failures, and communication is one of the places where I think they fail miserably. So right now, as we're filming this, we're right in dead center of the COVID pandemic, and nobody seems to be happy. Everybody seems to be frustrated. And I keep thinking if the government were a little bit better at sharing information, we wouldn't be having all of these disagreements and all of that. But because it so seems to be hidden and not clear, well, everybody's making up their own stories of conspiracies and all kinds of things, and people are worrying about things that maybe we don't need to worry so much about. So imagine now what's happening. So here in Winnipeg, we are now in a lockdown again, where businesses we're asking them to shut down or reduce the numbers and all of that. And so we've got one group of people who keep saying this is a good thing. Because the media obviously must be telling the truth about how we're all going to die of this. So if we can shut everything down, then maybe some of us will survive. And then we get the other camp who are saying the government shouldn't meddle in our lives. They should just leave us be. So whichever side of the coin you're on, you're probably not too happy. Because for those who are seeing this lockdown as simply a measure supporting what the media is saying that we're all going to die, then they are drawing conclusions that may not be totally quite so severe. Now imagine if the government took a different approach and they were to say, okay guys, we don't really know what's going on. This whole pandemic thing is new to us. We don't know what the consequences are. We're not too sure what the proper course of action is. And you guys are hearing it as well as we do. So we got two groups of doctors. One group over here, including the World Health Organization, saying lockdown is not a good idea. And we also have this group of medical practitioners who are saying lockdown is a good idea. So obviously, if they were honest and saying, look, there's no right or wrong answer here, we're kind of trying to figure things out as we go, but we figured that based on whatever data they have, and why don't they share the data that they do have that they seem to rely on? So based on this information, and this information, and maybe they would use concrete information, not just people's opinions, such as, in this province, they've tried the lockdown and it seems to work, or that state or that country. And therefore come up with the basis upon which they are founding their decision. And then once they've kind of laid out the plan as to why they're going down that direction, now they're kind of saying, but we're going to help all the business owners and we're going to give you grants. Well, even that doesn't put the business minds at rest, because they're thinking, so I'm getting all of these grants, how will this ever get paid for? Because the government is totally mute on how they're going to pay off the deficit. So more worry. So imagine now if the government maybe showed us that they have a plan. Yes, we will be giving out all this money in grants, and we have a plan so that as soon as the pandemic is over, here's what we're going to start to do. that makes sense to allow us to get back into favorable books. And maybe lay out the plan, at least to some degree, rather than just leaving people in the dark with no plan at all as to how this deficit is going to get paid. Now, notice what's happening is because we're not getting a whole bunch of information, and the government doesn't seem to admit to the fact that data is not clear, we are all left wondering what's their agenda. Because a lot of people are saying, well, the government is just doing this to gain control over us. And for lack of proof of the contrary, it's easy to go down this path and thinking that way. And those are some of the things that we have to be extremely careful when you have a business. And I don't care if it's an accounting practice or any kind of business, as soon as you have a team, I always think it's a good idea to let the team know where you stand on the decisions that you're making. And I think it's okay to tell them, look, I'm not too sure what the right solution is, but here's the data that's out there. There's this, that, and whatever. Now, based on this data that I've done the research on that appears to be accurate from where I stand, I am therefore drawing the conclusion that this may very well be our best course of action. And to admit that you're not sure whether this is really the best course of action, but based on what I see, this is the best course of action for the survival of the firm and the business, for the best interest of the team, and so on and so forth. And I think Churchill said it best. He said something along the lines that it's best to just face the truth and let everybody know where we stand. So I think that that's part of what we need to embrace as a business owner. Because like I said at the very beginning, failure to provide all of the information to your team will result in them creating all kinds of scenarios. And trust me, the scenarios they'll come up with is probably worse than the truth. So why not put the ugly truth out there?
I know there have been some rumors going around that the bank is no longer funding us. Well, I am here to put those rumors to rest. They are true.
And the uglier the truth, believe it or not, the better in a sense. Because if you really lay down the ugly truth, then you're going to find that your credibility goes up. Because if it's all rosy, they're going to start to doubt whether or not what you're saying is true. And I always found that to lay it all down adds credibility and puts their minds at ease that they don't need to go searching for other ugly truth because it's ugly enough as it is. And the other thing is that you got to remember is that the mind goes to drama. So again, if you leave holes in the stories and you're not answering all the questions that people on your team have, they will fill in the gaps with all kinds of crap. And trust me, it's not going to be good because the mind loves drama and it'll concur all kinds of things. Now, what it gets worse is that one person comes up with some kind of hypothetical possibility and it just spreads like wildfire. And we see it today with COVID. If you go on YouTube and all that, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories running around there. Why is that? Because we're kept in the dark. Come up with the facts, tell us what you know, tell us the things, and back up your data with both sides of the coin. And that is part of where I find that the government is falling short, is they seem to want to share one side of the coin and aren't even acknowledging that there's another side of this coin. So we're thinking, well, they're only listening to one group of doctors. They're not looking to this group. So if they show that, yes, we're looking at both sides and the reason we chose this side versus that side is for this reason, people would feel a lot more at ease. So the same applies to your business. When you go about and you want to make a conclusion of some kind, show them that you've looked at all scenarios and that you suddenly decide to choose the best of two evils. It's okay. So in a few seconds, I'm going to share with you when I think it might be good to withhold a little bit of information. But before I do that, if you find this video to be useful, please indicate so by liking it. And also, please subscribe. So when the time comes to determine what you're going to share, I've always found that every time I withheld information, it almost always turned out to be worse than if I had shared it. Now, there are times where there's certain information that cannot be shared. And the example of that is confidential information regarding certain employees, for example. So if you're finding that an employee is really, really struggling, well, obviously you don't want to share that kind of information with the entire team. And you may simply want to share enough information for people to get that there's something going on, and give them enough information to put their mind at ease that there's nothing going on that they need to be concerned about, but the rest is just that we're just respecting that person's privacy. There are things that are, and I've had situations, for example, where an employee who was well-liked, well-respected, resigned. And then all kinds of stories as to what happened, as to why they resigned. And such information sometimes will result in, again, privacy issues, where the reason they resigned is none of their business. But those are extremely delicate situations where if you say nothing, I'm telling you, it'll explode and people will come up with all kinds of reasons as to why the person resigned or possibly fired if that's the case. So you have to be able to sort through the information, determine how much you can share without invading that person's privacy, and yet give them as much information as you can without, again, infringing the person's privacy. But you want to leave as little room as possible for people to make up and conjure all kinds of stories of what happened. And I'm a big fan, especially if it's a smaller team, to not be afraid of doing a question period. So it's not like the government where we got to talk to 30 million people. In a smaller organization, it's possible to address, and I call them elephants in the room, to kind of say, okay, and you'll get vibes of that where everybody seems to be freaking out over something in your organization. So the idea is to squash these things as fast as you can. And the best way to do it is through a team meeting and says, okay, a lot of people here are worried about this. Or maybe people are questioning why I'm taking making this decision. Put the cards down on the table and again, put out all the ugly truth and allow the team to ask questions. And just be careful on how you answer the questions. And also, there's nothing wrong with sprinkling hope in all of this. So in other words, if things are really bad and there's a whole bunch of bad things and you're making the best of a situation, explain to them that here are the cruel facts and here's what we're doing about it. However, we are quite confident that the outcome will be good. And here's what good looks like, so that you're setting their expectations of what can happen and allow them to ask questions about the whole plan. And it's okay to say, we haven't considered that possibility. I don't know what to do about this. And it's okay to say, I'm not sure. Because people on your team don't expect you to have all the answers, probably not as much as you do. And I keep telling people, managing a team and leading a team is guesswork. And even the best of us are guessing all the time. So when people are asking me for questions relating to how to mentor their business, I keep telling them, I'm just guessing here. But your team needs to know that, and it's okay to tell them it's a guess based on this information that I've got, based on my experience, based on things I've lived before, based on what other mentors might have told you, but give them where the information is coming from, base your information, and don't be afraid of showing both sides of the coin and saying, yes, these are things that I've heard. These are the things I'm not sure you've heard, but here's why we would take that direction. I would like to hear your comments about times where maybe you felt you shared too much information, but also times where maybe you would agree that you might not have shared enough information, and what were the consequences of that. The whole purpose of us doing these videos is to help each other out. So by all means, if you agree, I would appreciate you sharing why you agree, the things that you've lived in your experience that shows that, yes, it was better to share more information. And if you disagree, share so as well, because I'd like to hear your thoughts about how much information, when you think it's proper to not necessarily share all the information, but also share your experiences of why you believe it might be a good idea to share more rather than less. And I suspect that many of you have lived the same experience as I have, where you have not shared all the information and how it just spiraled out of control. And the more people hear about these stories, I think the more weight that this video will have in showing people that you need to be open with your team. If any of you would like to share your comments regarding this video on a more private platform, we have created a LinkedIn group, and the information is below. So if you want to join this LinkedIn group and provide your thoughts, questions, comments, so we can get a discussion on a more private, that's a really good place to do it as well.